I used to set my clock by my husband. Every Tuesday at exactly 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Leonard would stand up from whatever he was doing, straighten his shirt, and reach for his jacket. It didn't matter if he was in the middle of a television program, trimming the roses in the garden, or helping me carry in groceries. 2 o'clock meant one thing: the bank. For 38 years of marriage, rain or shine, healthy or sick, he never missed it. Leonard, I used to tease, watching him check his watch like a soldier awaiting orders. If I didn't know better, I'd think you were meeting a secret lover. He would smile, come over, kiss my forehead, and say the same thing every time. Just keeping our future safe, Eleanor. And I believed him. Why wouldn't I? Leonard was an accountant. Numbers were his language. Spreadsheets were his religion. He balanced our checkbook to the penny. Our mortgage was always paid early. Our taxes were filed before anyone else on our street had even opened their envelopes. He made me feel protected. I was the kind of wife who trusted completely. I handled the house, the holidays, and the children. Leonard handled the money. That was our quiet, unspoken arrangement, built on decades of love and familiarity. And it worked. Until the day he died. If you believe that family should never keep secrets that destroy the people they love, please subscribe to Grandma's Moments. Stories like mine matter more than we realize. The call came while I was standing in the produce aisle at the grocery store. I was squeezing avocados, trying to find one that wasn't too soft or too hard, when my phone buzzed in my purse. I almost ignored it. I was in no hurry. Leonard would be home soon. He always came back from the bank around 3 with a loaf of bread or some little treat for me. But something made me answer. "Mom," my son Daniel said. His voice didn't sound like him. It was flat, careful, as if he were stepping across thin ice. "You need to come to St. Mary's Hospital." Dad collapsed at work. My hand tightened around the phone. "Collapsed?" I repeated. "What do you mean collapsed?" "He just went to the bank." "I know," Daniel said quietly. "The ambulance brought him straight here." I don't remember the drive. I remember red lights. A siren somewhere. My heart was pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. By the time I reached the hospital, Leonard was already gone. Massive heart attack, the doctor said. Probably quick. Probably painless. The kind of death Leonard would have chosen if he had been able to plan it. I didn't cry at the funeral. People kept watching me, whispering, saying things like, "She's in shock," or, "It hasn't hit her yet." But the truth was stranger than that. I felt lighter. Not because I didn't love Leonard. I did. I had loved him since I was 19 years old. But beneath the grief, beneath the exhaustion, beneath the casseroles and sympathy cards, there was a feeling I couldn't explain. Like I could finally breathe. I just didn't know why. 3 days after the funeral, a letter arrived. Plain white envelope. No return address. My name typed neatly on the front. Eleanor Hayes. I sat at the kitchen table, Leonard's chair still empty, and slid my finger under the flap. Inside was a single sheet of paper from First Regional Bank. "Dear Mrs. Hayes, we wish to express our condolences regarding your husband's passing. Per the terms of the safe deposit box lease, we must inform you that you are listed as the secondary holder. The box has been paid through the end of the year. Please contact us to arrange access." I read it 3 times. We had a safe deposit box. Leonard had never mentioned it. Not once in 38 years. My hand started to tremble. I called the bank that afternoon. The woman on the phone was polite and professional. "Yes, Mrs. Hayes. The box is registered to Leonard Hayes with Eleanor Hayes as co-holder. You're fully authorized to access it." "Thursday at 10, I said, though I wasn't sure my voice was steady. 2 days. 2 days of waiting with a knot in my stomach that wouldn't go away. On Wednesday evening, Daniel came by. He looked exhausted. His tie was loose, his eyes rimmed with red. He sat in Leonard's chair without thinking, then froze as if realizing what he'd done. "Mom," he said softly, "we need to talk about Dad's finances." My heart skipped. "What about them?" "I've been going through his office. Some things don't make sense." He opened a folder and slid a stack of papers across the table. Bank statements. Accounts I'd never seen. "Did you know Dad had 3 checking accounts?" he asked. "No," I said. "We only had the joint account." He pointed at a column of numbers. This one is empty. This one was closed last year. And this one, he paused. It has $43. I felt dizzy. That's not possible, I whispered. Our retirement alone should be hundreds of thousands. Daniel's face told me the truth before his mouth did. I can't find it, Mom. Any of it. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every Tuesday afternoon Leonard had ever left the house. Don't worry about the money, Eleanor. I've got it covered. He always sounded so certain. Thursday morning I dressed carefully. Navy blazer. Black slacks. Clothes that felt like armor. The bank was cold and modern, all glass and steel. A woman named Patricia led me to the vault. Your husband was a valued client, she said kindly. Box 847 was heavier than I expected. I carried it into a small private room and placed it on the table. For a long moment I just stared at it. 38 years of marriage, locked inside a metal box. I opened it. Inside were folders. Dozens of them. The first was labeled Investments, Private. Every page screamed disaster. Failed stocks. Lost money. Hundreds of thousands gone. The second folder made my throat close. Home equity loans. 3 of them. Taken out against our house. Our home. Total debt. $270,000. Then I opened the third folder. Credit cards. In my name. 15 of them. All maxed out. Total balance. $96,000. My social security number. My forged signature. Leonard had stolen my identity. At the bottom of the box was an envelope with my name written in his handwriting. I opened it. Eleanor, if you're reading this, I'm already gone. I don't remember how long I sat there. But when I finally walked out of that room, my life was no longer what I thought it was. I walked out of that small bank room carrying copies of my own destruction. The papers felt heavier than bricks in my purse. Each step through the marble lobby made my knees weak. People moved around me, laughing softly, tapping on phones, standing in line for withdrawals and deposits. Living in a world where money was still something simple. Mine was no longer simple. Mrs. Hayes, Patricia said gently as she walked me to the door. If you need anything else, please call me directly. I nodded, but I couldn't speak. Outside, the air felt too cold, too sharp. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, breathing slowly, counting each breath the way the nurse once taught me after a panic attack years ago. In, out, in, out. Leonard's letter replayed in my head like a cruel echo. I did it to buy time. I thought I could fix it before you ever had to know. Fix it? By destroying me. I drove home on autopilot. When I pulled into the driveway, Daniel's car was already there. My son was pacing on the front lawn, phone pressed to his ear, his shoulders tense. He hung up the moment he saw me. Mom, he said, rushing toward me. Where were you? I've been calling. The bank, I said. He saw my face and went pale. What did you find? I didn't answer. I walked past him into the house, set my purse on the table, and pulled out the copies Patricia had made. I spread them across the kitchen table like a dealer laying out a deadly hand. Sit, I said. Daniel obeyed. He flipped through the pages slowly. I watched his face change. Shock, confusion, disbelief, and finally horror. Mom, he whispered. This can't be right. It is, I said quietly. He took out loans on the house? Daniel looked up. In your name? Yes. And these credit cards? My name. My social security number. His forged signature. He slammed his fist on the table. Oh my God. Dad. Don't, I said sharply. Don't defend him. Not yet. Daniel swallowed hard. There's no life insurance, he said. I checked. Nothing. I know, I replied. How do you know? Because your father spent the last 5 years destroying everything we built. Silence filled the kitchen. Our kitchen. The place where Leonard used to sit every morning, sipping coffee and reading the paper. Daniel finally looked at me with wet eyes. Mom, we're ruined. I met his gaze, forcing myself not to collapse. No, I said. We're not ruined. We're just betrayed. That night I didn't sleep. I lay in Leonard's empty bed, staring at the place where he used to lie, where he used to reach for my hand in the dark. 38 years. Every memory suddenly felt poisoned. Every smile. Every don't worry. every kiss on my forehead. Had it all been a lie? Or had he simply been drowning, dragging me down with him? By morning, my grief had hardened into something colder. Resolve. The lawyer Patricia had recommended was named Jennifer Rodriguez. Her office was on the 8th floor of a downtown building, all clean lines and bright windows. She was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, and calm in a way that made me feel slightly safer. She listened without interrupting as I laid everything out: the safe deposit box, the loans, the forged signatures, Leonard's letter. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. "Mrs. Hayes," she said carefully, "this is one of the worst cases of spousal financial abuse I've seen." Abuse. The word stung. "He was my husband," I said quietly. "That doesn't change what he did," she replied. "This is identity theft. Fraud. Criminal activity." "But he's dead," I whispered. "What can we do?" "We can prove you weren't complicit," she said. "We can fight the creditors. We can try to save your house. But it won't be quick and it won't be easy." "How long?" 6 months. Maybe a year." "And how much?" She hesitated. "More than you have." I thought about the $43 in our account. "Tell me what to do," I said. That evening my daughter Melissa called. She'd always been closer to Leonard than to me. Daddy's girl from the moment she was born. "Mom," she said softly, "Daniel told me what you think you found." "I don't think," I replied. "I know." There was a pause. "Dad wouldn't do that," she said. "He loved you." "He loved me," I agreed. "And he also stole my identity and destroyed our finances. Both can be true." "You're wrong," she snapped. "You're grieving. You're confused." "I have his letter," I said. "I have the documents." She was silent. "I need space," she finally said. "I can't listen to this." The line went dead. I stared at my phone, my chest aching in a new way. Leonard had betrayed me. And now my own daughter didn't believe me. Over the next few weeks, the truth kept getting uglier. Jennifer filed fraud reports. Credit card companies started calling. Some were sympathetic. Some treated me like a criminal. One clerk actually said, "Ma'am, your signature is on these forms." "It's not mine," I said through clenched teeth. They didn't care. Daniel became my anchor. He organized paperwork, made spreadsheets, and went to meetings with me. One night, while we sat surrounded by piles of documents, he said something that made my blood run cold. "Mom, Dad asked me to invest with him a few years ago." My heart stopped. "How much?" $50,000, he whispered. "From my kids' college fund." I grabbed his hand. "Did you?" "No." Sarah refused. "Thank God." I closed my eyes. Leonard hadn't just been destroying me. He had been trying to destroy our children too. And suddenly everything made terrible, perfect sense. There is a kind of pain that doesn't scream. It doesn't make you fall to your knees or wail into a pillow. It just sits inside your chest like a stone. That was the kind of pain I woke up with every morning after I learned the truth about Leonard. I didn't dream of him anymore. I didn't see his face when I closed my eyes. Instead, I saw numbers, debts, signatures that weren't mine, counts I had never opened. I would lie in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the house creak in the quiet dawn, and think 38 years. 38 years of believing my life was safe. And in the end, it had all been built on a lie. The phone started ringing before I had even finished my first cup of tea. Unknown numbers. Toll-free lines. Automated messages. "Mrs. Hayes, this is an attempt to collect a debt." At first, I answered them. I explained. I told them Leonard had committed fraud. I told them I had never opened those accounts. I told them I was working with a lawyer. Some of them listened. Most of them didn't. One man laughed softly and said, "Ma'am, your name is on the paperwork. You owe the money." "I didn't sign it," I said. "You benefited from the marriage," he replied. That word again. Benefited. As if being married to a man who secretly destroyed my future was some kind of advantage. I hung up, shaking, my tea gone cold in my hands. Daniel tried to protect me from the worst of it. He set up a separate phone line so the creditors would stop calling my personal number. He sorted the mail so I wouldn't have to see the red letters marked final notice. But some of them still slipped through. I would be sitting in the living room, staring at Leonard's favorite chair, when another envelope would arrive. Each one felt like another betrayal. Another proof that even in death, Leonard was still hurting me. Melissa still hadn't called. Every day that passed without hearing from my daughter felt like losing her all over again. Daniel tried to reassure me. She just needs time, Mom. She loved Dad. This is hard for her. I loved him too, I whispered. But I'm the one he destroyed. One evening, Daniel came over looking more troubled than usual. He didn't even take his jacket off. Mom, he said, sitting heavily in a chair. There's something else I need to tell you. I felt a chill. What is it? A few years ago, Dad asked me to invest with him. My heart skipped. How much? $50,000. I stared at him. That was for the kids' college. I know, he said, his voice breaking. He told me it was a sure thing. A tech startup. He said we'd triple it in a year. And you said no? I almost didn't, he admitted. Sarah didn't trust it. She said if it was so safe, why did Dad need our money? I closed my eyes. Leonard had been desperate. He had been dragging everyone he could toward the edge with him. If I'd said yes, Daniel whispered, we would have lost everything too. You didn't, I said, gripping his hand. That's what matters. Jennifer called the next morning. The banks are preparing to fight, she warned. They're going to argue you benefited from the loans because you lived in the house. It's my house, I said. I paid for it too. And we'll prove that, she replied. But this is going to be ugly. The court date was set for November. 3 months away. 3 months of waiting, worrying, and wondering if I would be homeless by winter. That was when I realized something frightening. I had no money, no income, no safety net. Leonard had taken it all. So I started looking for work. At 68 years old, I dusted off my old librarian resume and sent it to every bookstore, library, and cafe within 20 miles. Most never replied. One did. A small independent bookstore downtown. The owner, Ruth, looked at my thin resume and then at my tired eyes. Why now? She asked. My husband died, I said simply. And I just found out he left me with nothing. She closed the folder. When can you start? I nearly cried right there in her office. For the first time in weeks, I felt something like hope. Not much, but enough to keep going. The first paycheck from Ruth's bookstore was only a few $100s. It shouldn't have mattered. I had once lived in a home worth nearly $1 million, with a husband who managed 6-figure accounts and spoke casually about investments and tax shelters. A few $100s should have felt like nothing. But when I held that check in my hand, it felt like a lifeline. It was the first money I had earned that wasn't controlled by Leonard. It was mine. I opened a new bank account that afternoon. One Leonard had never touched, never known about. When the teller asked if I wanted a joint account, I said no so quickly it startled even me. Just my name, I said. Only my name. It felt like the first small rebellion of my life. Jennifer called 2 days later. We have a problem, she said. My stomach tightened. One of the banks is trying to push the foreclosure process forward. They want to pressure you into settling before the court date. So they're trying to scare me? Yes. And it might work if we don't move fast. The idea of losing my home, the place where my children had taken their first steps, where Leonard had once carried me across the threshold, felt unbearable. I won't let them, I said. That's the spirit, Jennifer replied. But you need to be prepared. Court will be brutal. Melissa still hadn't called. Not once. The silence from my own daughter hurt more than any threatening letter. Daniel tried to convince me she'd come around. She just needs to see the evidence. I had to see it, I said. Why can't she? The weeks leading up to the hearing were some of the hardest of my life. I worked at the bookstore during the day, smiling at customers, recommending novels, pretending to be a normal woman with a normal life. At night, I became a detective in my own tragedy. Bank statements, forged signatures, letters from creditors, Leonard's carefully worded confession. I learned more about my husband in 3 weeks than I had in 38 years of marriage. And every discovery hurt. One night, Daniel asked, "Do you still love him?" I thought about it for a long time. I loved who I thought he was, I said. I don't know who he really was. The day of the court hearing arrived cold and gray. Daniel drove me. Melissa didn't come. She sent a text instead. I can't watch you do this to Dad's memory. I stared at the words until my eyes burned. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Jennifer stood beside me as the bank's lawyer tried to paint me as a greedy widow trying to escape debt. Then Jennifer stood. She laid out the evidence calmly, one piece at a time. The forged signatures. The separate accounts. Leonard's own confession. And finally she called me to the stand. Mrs. Hayes, she said gently, did you know about these loans? No. Did you sign these documents? No. Did you receive any of this money? No. The bank's lawyer tried to trip me up. Did you trust your husband? Yes. Did you benefit from the marriage? I lived in my home. That's not the same as agreeing to be robbed. The judge called a recess. I waited on a wooden bench, my hands folded, my heart pounding. After an hour we were called back. The judge looked down at me. I find clear evidence of fraud, he said. The debts are void. I didn't cry. I just breathed. For the first time in months I could breathe. But as I walked out of that courtroom victorious, I felt strangely empty. Because winning in court didn't give me back my husband. Or my daughter. Or the 38 years I had lived in the dark. The judge's words echoed in my ears long after we left the courtroom. The debts are void. The property liens are released. It should have felt like victory. It should have felt like fireworks relief celebration. But when I stepped outside into the gray November air, all I felt was exhaustion. The kind that settles into your bones, the kind that doesn't go away with sleep. Daniel squeezed my hand. You did it, Mom. I nodded. I survived, I said quietly. We drove home in silence. I watched the rain streak down the windshield and thought about how close I had come to losing everything. Not just the house, not just the money, but my sense of who I was. For months I had been defined by Leonard's lies. A wife who didn't know. A woman who trusted too much. A fool, some people probably thought. But I wasn't a fool. I was a woman who had been deceived. There is a difference. That night I walked through my home slowly, room by room. The living room where Leonard and I used to watch the evening news together. The dining room where our children once did homework while I cooked dinner. The bedroom where we had whispered dreams about retirement, about traveling, about growing old together. Everything was still there. And yet, nothing felt the same. Leonard had lived in this house. His secrets had lived here too. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding one of his old sweaters. It still smelled faintly of him. For the first time since his death, I let myself cry. Not for the man I had lost, but for the life I had believed we were building. 2 days later my phone rang. Melissa. I stared at her name for a long moment, my heart pounding. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Part of me knew that this call would change everything. Mom, she said, her voice thin and shaky. I went to the bank. I closed my eyes. I wanted to prove you wrong, she continued. I wanted to show you that Dad wasn't what you said he was. And I asked softly, there's a credit card in my name. $23,000. I never opened it. The room tilted. Leonard hadn't just destroyed me. He had destroyed our daughter too. Melissa began to cry. My credit is ruined. I can't even get approved for a car loan. I didn't know. I didn't know he was doing this. I know, sweetheart, I said. I know. She came over that night. We sat at the kitchen table, the same place where Daniel had first shown me the documents that shattered my world. Now it was Melissa's turn. I didn't believe you, she said, tears streaming down her face. I thought you were trying to hurt Dad's memory. I know, I said gently. I needed him to be good, she whispered. He was my hero. He was mine too, I replied. We cried together, not just for the betrayal, but for the man we thought we knew. Word began to spread. Quietly at first. A woman from the church called me. Then another. Then another. My husband handles all our money. I think something is wrong. Ruth noticed the pattern. You've become a lighthouse, she said. People are finding you. We started a small group in the back of the bookstore. No signs. No flyers. Just women sitting in a circle, sharing stories they had never told out loud before. One woman said her husband wouldn't let her see their bank statements. Another said she found loans she didn't recognize. Another whispered, I think he's using my name. I listened. I believed them. because I knew what it felt like to be invisible. Leonard had tried to erase me. Instead, he had turned me into someone who could see others. One afternoon, Melissa came with me to the bookstore. She watched the women talk, cry, and hug each other. "Dad did this to all of us," she said quietly. "Yes," I replied. "But it doesn't get to be the end of our story." For the first time in months, I felt something that wasn't fear or grief. I felt purpose. And that, more than any court victory, was the beginning of my freedom. The first winter after the court case was the quietest of my life. Not because the house was empty, Daniel and Melissa visited often now, but because for the first time in nearly 4 decades, I was not living inside someone else's shadow. There were no secrets left waiting to explode. No hidden accounts. No lies humming beneath the floorboards. Just silence. And peace. Every morning I woke early, made myself tea, and sat by the window as the sun rose over the neighborhood Leonard and I had lived in for most of our adult lives. The roses he had once trimmed were gone now. Replaced by a small vegetable garden Daniel helped me plant. Tomatoes, herbs, and a few stubborn flowers. Life is starting again. Slowly. The support group at Ruth's bookstore had grown. What began as a handful of frightened women sitting in folding chairs had become something far more powerful. Some lawyers volunteered their time. Credit counselors. Therapists. Even a retired judge who came once a month to explain women's legal rights. We called it clear ground because that's what we were trying to give each other. A place to stand where the truth wasn't hidden. Where no one was gaslit into thinking they were crazy for asking questions. One evening, a woman about my age stood up with trembling hands. "My husband always told me I was bad with money," she said. "He said it was easier if he handled everything. I thought that meant he loved me." I looked at her and said softly, "Control is not love." She cried. So did I. Melissa comes every week now. She brought files, coffee, and sometimes just herself. One night she stayed after everyone left. "Mom," she said, "I'm still angry at Dad." "That's allowed," I replied. "I loved him. But he hurt us." "Yes," I said. "And loving someone doesn't erase what they did." We sat together in the bookstore, 2 women no longer pretending. Daniel's life changed too. He opened college accounts for his children in his wife's name only, just to be safe. He started checking everything twice. Leonard's betrayal had made him careful, but it had also made him honest. "Dad always said not to worry," he told me once. "I don't say that anymore." 1 year after Leonard's death, I went back to a bank. Not First Regional. A new one. I walked up to the counter and said, "I'd like to open an account." "In what name?" the teller asked. I hesitated. "Margaret Sullivan," I said. My maiden name. Because that was who I had been before Leonard. And who I was becoming again. As I walked out of the bank, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Freedom. Not because my life was easy, but because it was finally mine. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe to Grandama Moments. Every week we share real-life inspired stories of grandmothers who survived betrayal, stand up for themselves, and find their way back to dignity. You are not alone, and neither are they.